Not a lot of time in Africa, but some.
Okay. Well, so we are live. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Shri Prabhupada. All glories to our beloved speaker for today, His Grace ANUTTAMA Prabhu, who needs no introduction, even though this is his first time speaking on this platform. Prabhuji is, of course, a direct disciple of Shri Prabhupada, and he's been serving Shri Prabhupada since his youthful days till today. And to those of you who have been here for a longer period with us, you remember there was a time when we used to have Her Grace Mother Rukmini Devi, who was sharing her love and wisdom with us at least once every month. Of course, Prabhuji is the beloved husband. And after the class, we'll give a little bit more bio of Prabhuji so that the devotees may know if you did not already know him, which I believe you probably are living in the jungles somewhere. I'm sorry for my humor. But Prabhuji, we're very grateful you are here with us today. Like you saw, Sri Prabhupada has already chanted the Jai Radha Madhava. Some devotees also prefer to chant, even though Sri Prabhupada has finished chanting. If you decide to do that, that is also okay. Otherwise, we just go by Sri Prabhupada's Jai Radha Madhava, and then we'll put the verse. Unfortunately or fortunately, we are covering 4 verses today, 3:15, 9 through 12, because there are short papers. And so you read that, you give your purpose, your insights, and then devotees, if they may have questions or comments, we do that, and then we'll bring the class to an end. We also want to express our deepest appreciation to His Holiness Kavichandra Swami Maharaj, who is here with us. Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for being here. Mentor, Hare Krishna. So, Sri Anuttama Prabhu, we may put the verses on the screen and then you take it over from here. Hare Krishna, thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Prabhu. So I'm in Jaipur, and so hopefully the connection will be good. It shows I've got 3 bars right now, so hopefully that'll hold out the whole time. But maybe I was really appreciating when you had the Prabhupada's Kirtan playing, his chanting Jai Radhamadhava. So I don't think I need to do that again. And I really was inspired by seeing all the photos. Some were quite rare, and it definitely showed an example of Srila Prabhupada in so many different situations all around the world, planting the seeds of Krishna consciousness. So that was very, very inspiring. So I'll just chant our invocation.
Hare Krishna.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So as you said, Prabhu, so you've assigned me actually 4 verses in the
Yes.
3rd canto, chapter 15. So the first one is there. So how do we do this? I know it's a little different like when you're online. Should I just read it through? Because
Yes,
sometimes repetition is hard.
you treat it whichever way you prefer. Usually, it's more or less like a temple room setting. So you take it whichever way you want to.
Okay, so if I chant and everybody can recite one time, they can respond. That works okay?
If you want that, we would do that. Oftentimes we don't, but for example, His Holiness Kavichandra Maharaj, he prefers that the devotees repeat after him when he speaks. So if you
Okay.
want us to repeat, we can also do that, but sometimes it creates echo. But we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it on the first verse. I'll
Okay.
say one line, then everybody can repeat a line, and then we'll just go directly to the translation and the purport because there are 4 verses, so we won't do all of the word for words. So I'll
Yeah.
just read the first line.
Okay.
Satvam vidhatsva shambhumams
Satvam vidatswa samabhumams
Tamasa lupta karmanam.
Tamasa lupta karmanam.
Adabra dayaya drishya.
Atabra dayaya drishtya.
Apanan arhasik shitum.
Apanan arhashikshitum.
Okay, so we'll just go to the English translation. The demigods, and then we'll do this whole series of verses, and then I'll kind of explain for those that may not know what the background is and
Okay.
where this particular part is falling in the Bhagavatam. So the translation by Srila Prabhupada, the demigods prayed to Brahma, please look upon us mercifully, for we have fallen into a miserable condition. Because of the darkness, all our work has been suspended. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Because of complete darkness throughout the universe, the regular activities and engagements of all the different planets were suspended. In the north and south poles of this planet, there are sometimes no divisions of day and night. Similarly, when the sunlight does not approach the different planets within the universe, there is no distinction between day and night. Okay, in the next verse. So I'll just do this one, I'll chant this one. Esha Deva Diter Garbha Oja Kashyapamar Pitam Tishastir Mir Rayan Sarva Vardhategnir Evite Hasi. Translation. As fuel overloads the fire, so the embryo created by the semen of Kashyapa in the womb of Diti has caused complete darkness throughout the universe. This is still the demigod speaking. So we get a sense of what's going on here now. We're talking about the two children in the womb of Diti. Purport. The darkness throughout the universe is explained herewith as being caused by the embryo created in the womb of Diti by the semen of Kashyapa. Text 11. Maitreya Uvacha Suprahasya Mahabaho Bhagavan Shabdagocharaha Prajachastatma Bordevan Prinan Ruchiraya Gira. Translation. Sri Maitreya said, thus Lord Brahma, who is understood by transcendental vibration, thus Lord Brahma, who is understood by transcendental vibration, tried to satisfy the demigods, being pleased with their words of prayer. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Brahma could understand the misdeeds of Diti, and therefore he smiled at the whole situation. He replied to the demigods present there in words they could understand. The last one we'll read today, text 12. Brahmo vacha manasa me sita yushmat purvaja sanakadayaha churu vihaya sa lokal lokeshu vigataspiriha. Translation. Lord Brahma said, my four sons Sanaka, Sanatan, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumara, who were born from my mind, are your predecessors. Sometimes they travel throughout the material and spiritual skies without any definite desire. Last purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. When we speak of desire, we refer to desire for material sense gratification. Saintly persons like Sanak, Sanatan, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumar have no material desire, but sometimes they travel all over the universe out of their own accord to preach devotional service. Jai. Om Gyana Tamyanasha Janan Anjana Shalakaya Chakshu Umritamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasani Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So, I want to thank all of you, especially Sahade Prabhu, for inviting me to speak to this group of devotees. It's funny that you're in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. My main residence is in Washington, D.C., which is about 2.5 hours apart. But I had to come all the way to India to be connected with your group of Vaishnavas here that you link up through Harrisburg. So kind of interesting, interesting situation. But it's a privilege to be with all of you. As mentioned, currently I'm in Jaipur, which is the home of the Govinda Dev deity from of Rupa Goswami, Damodar Jiva Goswami, Gopinath Madhu Pandit, and Radha Madhava, and of course other deities. Many, many, many temples here. So it's a very, very special place. And just today had Darshan went to the Gopin, Go- Govinda Dev temple, saw Gopinath, and it's very inspiring. For those of you that haven't been there, it's a big, beautiful temple, and there's all history where the king built the palace in such a way that he could see from the palace directly into the deity's room, directly see the deity. That so you see this beautiful big palace. I mean, millions of people come every year, thousands every day to visit the palace, and out the back door, a few hundred yards away, you look right to the temple. And when you go to the temple, there's so many people there worshiping the deity and chanting Hare Krishna. I remember myself as a young Western born, I was born in America, devotee. When I first came to this temple and was so amazed because 1,000 people there all chanting Hare Krishna for the evening arti and a little different melodies than we use in ISKCON. But still, it just really impressed me. And I can remember thinking, this is some 40 years ago, thinking that nobody's ever going to be able to tell me and again that this is some kind of new cult, that Hare Krishna is some new thing around the world. This temple's been here for, hundreds of years, longer than America's been there. And here's all these people chanting Hare Krishna. So it's definitely not some new thing. It far precedes anything that, at least in my country, that people have a history of. So I was there today, and it was very, very nice. And any of you that haven't been there, please be sure to try to come next time you get an opportunity. So these verses, just a few thoughts on these verses, and I read ahead and a little bit behind to get a sense of where this is in the Bhagavatam, because it's interesting because the demigods are praying to Lord Brahma, and then Brahma starts to speak, and he talks about the four Kumaras. And with only that little bit of it, we kind of wonder like, well, what's happening here? What's that all about? So this is actually leading up to the story of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha and their birth and all of the trouble that they caused and how eventually they were killed by Lord Vraha and then Lord Nrsingadev. Some of you may have seen, I don't know if it was released everywhere in the world, but at least certainly in India and in a lot of European countries in America, there was this film just about a year ago, or maybe less than a year, Maha Avatar Nishinga. I don't know if that was released in all the different countries that are represented here, but I'm curious, maybe those devotees can put up your electronic hands if you can. Who's seen that film? It's an animated film, or your real hand, whatever. It's an animated film about Lord Nrsingadev, and of course it covers Lord Varaha. So Sahadev, only you and me. So everybody else, let's see. Okay, Hamsaduta Prabhu has seen it. Anybody else seen that movie? It's a wonderful film.
Maharaj has also watched it.
Mirage has watched it. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I think it hasn't been released everywhere. Joshua, where's
Joshua.
Joshua based? What part of the world is Joshua in?
Joshua.
Sacramento, California.
Sacramento, California. Okay, again, I had to come all the way to India Right. Loca Davy, where are you based? What part of the world?
Loka is in Harrisburg. She's my wife.
Oh, that's your wife. Okay, well, it's
Yes,
good that you took her to the film then. Okay, good. So you both got together. Okay, that's good. That's very good. Okay, so not everybody saw, but it's a beautiful film about this very incident that we're reading about in the Bhagavatam. So, what's happening here, and I was thinking like all Bhagavatam verses and Gita verses and really all Shastric verses, there's a lot of different points that could be made in terms of, these purports, even though they're short purports. And it's an interesting section, and there's a lot of different points that can be made. So we'll just discuss a few of those. So we see in the beginning that the demigods, they're approaching Lord Brahma, and they're very disturbed because they're saying it's dark. We can't do our work. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what the cause this is, and we're disturbed. So they're approaching Brahma and they're asking for his help. And then there's three verses of that. And then there's this fourth verse where Brahma starts saying, well, I have these four sons. They're your predecessors, and sometimes they travel around the world. And it's like, huh? What, what kind of an answer is that? We've got an immediate problem here, and you're telling us about like, some older brothers of ours or something that we're not sure what the connection is there. So it's interesting, draw some reflections on this. So the first one about these first three verses in particular. It's interesting to note that even the demigods, their position is very shaky. Described they live very, very long lives. They have so many different mystic powers, and their bodies are stronger than ours, and they're more beautiful than ours, and have a lot of advantages being on these higher planets within the material universe. But even the demigods, with all of the opulences and all the opportunities they have for probably sometimes we use the word better standard of life, still their position is very shaky. And it's interesting for us to draw a parallel to what happens in the world around us because our mind, of course, wants to always tell us that we should just apply ourselves and not just our own minds, but billboards and the materialistic society all around us tells us just apply yourself, work very hard, make money, get a good job, get a prestigious position in society, and then you'll be set for life. Everything will be comfortable, everything will be good, and no worries. But here we're seeing even the demigods, which are, again, they live thousands of years. They're higher beings. They've got so many mystic powers and different kind of subtle abilities that we can't even imagine. Their position is shaky. They're worried, and they're thinking something's going wrong here. So it's an important lesson for all of us because we can see in this world that oftentimes, the wealthy people very small compared to the demigods, but draw a parallel. They're kind of wealthy like the demigods. We see famous people kind of like the demigods. They're beautiful people, and oftentimes they seem so successful. And people will be thinking, a lot of times people think, oh, if I was only as successful as they were. Like I was noticing today visited the Jaipur Palace just before going for darshan and Govindaji Temple. And there were so many young people, young Indian people, some Western people there too, or people from other parts of the world. And they're all, of course, they have their phones out and they're taking pictures of each other up in front of all the historic buildings and in front of the pretty flower bushes and all that. And I was noticing a lot of times they kind of like take pictures of themselves like spinning around in circles. And I was thinking they're just kind of imitating something they've seen on TV. Some actress or some actor or some prestigious, so-called prestigious position. So they're imitating that, thinking that, well, now I'm, dancing like so many famous Bollywood stars or Hollywood stars or whatever. Because they're aspiring they're thinking how nice a position that must be. If only so many people will watch me spinning around the way such and such an actress does, or standing against the pole and looking very kind of like sharp, like so many different male actors do. And if somehow maybe I'll be discovered like them. So this parallel is very interesting because we should to think that even the demigods, as much power and wealth and longevities they have, they're worried about their position. And they're going to Brahma, trying to figure out, hey, something's going wrong here. Something's weird. So part of the illusory energy in this world is to think that, like they say, the grass is always greener on the other side of the hill. If I only had as much money as, my neighbor, if I only had as much prestige as so and so, if I was only as famous as so and so, then everything would be fine. But actually, it's not a fact. When I flew to India about 2, 3 weeks ago, I stopped at a bookstore. I like to stop in bookstores and see what's kind of once in a while buy something, not very often, but see kind of what's of interest to people these days, what's attracting attention. And I picked up one book, and I should have noted down the man's name. I'd never heard of him before, but it was just another example of so many examples that are there. It mentioned that this person, it was a big, thick book, it was a whole biography about him. And now, in the year 2010, he had a big, big, big business he developed. If I remember the numbers right, he sold his business. I'm pretty sure they said $11 billion. That's a lot of money. $11 billion. He sold his business. I remember this to Hewlett Packard. So, like, wow, the guy built up this big business. He's so famous. What a successful businessman. He sold his business, but then it said after that he got involved in some kind of legal scandal. I didn't read the book again. I just read the back cover, so just a few some summaries. He got involved in some legal scandal, lasted for about 10 years. So he's like really up there, $11 billion. Then he got involved in some legal scandal. But then that got resolved. So he's like in this roller coaster. But then it said then he was sailing someplace in the Mediterranean and the ship sank and he and his 5 daughters drowned. So here's a guy with $11 billion. He built up a business so powerful, so rich, so famous, $11 billion. He gets all the money, but then he loses his status because of legal problems. But then he gets out of it, everything seems fine, and then his boat sinks with 5 daughters. It's horrible. So that's, I mean, compared to the status, the material status of everybody here on this call today, I'm sure. I mean, he's like a demigod. But even with all the money that he had, so much distress, and ultimately, you know, 5 daughters, I don't know what ages they were, but what a horrible thing. What a horrible thing to happen. So that's the first point, that we shouldn't be bewildered by the opulence of this material world. But we should develop knowledge to see that even if I was a demigod, you're still not in a safe position. You're still in a dangerous position. There's still so many adversities that come. And by developing that kind of knowledge, that we can not be so bewildered to use our energy seeking things that are only temporary gratification. So that's kind of the first lesson we can learn from this, that even the demigods, they got problems up there. And as it describes in the Gita, that one who's in knowledge sees that happiness and distress, they come and go like winter and summer seasons. Describe one who's in knowledge, they see gold, like a lot of people that work really hard to get a lot of gold. The Gita says one who sees gold and stones is the same. That's really the platform of knowledge, to actually see things like that. So that's one lesson that we can take from these verses. The second one that came to my mind is to be thinking about, okay, well, if I realize I'm in a difficult situation like the demigods realized, what do I do? A lot of people, they realize they're in a very difficult position in life and they just try to forget it or just ignore it. They take shelter of intoxication. They binge drink, or they binge other kind of drugs, or they binge movies. It's like they just take your mind off it. And it's kind of like the old expression. I don't know if it's true or not, but they talk about the ostrich. Like when there's danger, he sticks his head in the sand. I can remember cartoons when I was a kid. The ostrich would just stick his head in the sand as if that's going to make the problem go away. Well, it's not going to make the problem go away. So what do we do? So this good example is given here in these verses. When we realize that there is a problem, there are a lot of problems in this world. Like the demigods, we can learn. What did they do? They sought out higher knowledge. They went to a person and said, "Hey, Brahma, we don't know what's happening. We're afraid, we're worried, we're seeing a lot of problems. What should we possibly do? And we know that, and in one sense, you could say, like any problem, if you really want to solve a problem, first you have to understand it. Why is it happening, right? Then to seek help according to what help might be there, and then to apply that knowledge and that help best to try to alleviate the situation. So in the same way, the demigods, they're realizing, there's problems here. And it describes in the Gita, well, what should you do? Famous verse, Tadvidi Pranipatina. You should approach a spiritual master, spiritual teacher, inquire from him submissively, and they can impart knowledge unto us by which we can understand the truth and see what actually should be done in this life. So that's the general thing. It's interesting that verse, that the next verse is not as famous, and I know a different translation of it, so I'll go ahead and just read the one that's in this little Bhagavad Gita that I travel with when I went away. 435, Krishna says, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into illusion. For by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but a part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mind. So the demigods are approaching Brahma for knowledge to try to figure out, well, where's this problem coming from? What do we need to do? The same way it's described to all of us, we should see that our situation is similarly a very difficult one. We should approach particularly spiritual teachers, gurus, who can awaken us knowledge of understanding the situation, the difficulties that we're in. And when they give us that knowledge, what is it we understand? That everything is connected to Krishna, that everyone is part and parcel of Krishna, that everyone has a connection with him, and that and to see everyone like that. So that's the second point, that one, knowing that even the topmost planet material world down to the lowest, Krishna says in the 8th chapter of Gita, they're all a place of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who retains his abode, he says, never takes birth again. So that first principle, to know that no matter what situation we get in the material world, it's going to be difficult. Second one, what do I do once I understand, oh my gosh, you're right, I got difficulties. I can acknowledge and admit it. Approach somebody that actually knows. And then the third principle, it's an interesting one, because when the demigods approach Brahma, he starts out in this long story. I don't even know how many chapters it goes on. I didn't have a chance to take a look at that. But lots of chapters of understanding the whole thing about, with the four Kumaras and how they were cursed. Jai and Vijay, they came down. It took 3 births as demons to get back quicker. And, the whole story of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu and et cetera, et cetera. The whole thing is there in the Bhagavatam. So he tells this whole story. Okay, so what do we learn from that? Well, what's interesting, I think, is to see that we need to also understand our situation through the eyes of history, through the eyes of the proper perspective. If we don't see things in a proper perspective, then it's very difficult to actually make a solution to problems in life. Just like a little kid, you see little children sometimes, and they'll say, mommy, mommy, I'm hungry. When's dinner, right? And the mom will say half an hour. She's thinking half an hour is like, I don't barely have enough time to finish dinner in half an hour, right? For her, it's like a very short period of time. But the child often is thinking, a half an hour, oh my gosh, what? I need dinner now, I'm hungry, right? Because for them, 30 minutes is this huge period of time. But in knowledge, one realizes actually it's pretty short. It's your mom. She's going to make you a nice dinner and offer to Christian. You don't have to worry about a thing. Everything's going to be fine. But because the child doesn't have perspective, and of course, the younger child, even sometimes you see, something will happen there. You see it all the time. Little tiny kids, they're running around, they're playing, and then something happens, that they don't like, and immediately they start to cry and they throw a whole scene, right? But then the mother or the father or the auntie, whoever, more or less kind of distracts them to something else because their attention span is so close because they can't really see things in perspective yet. But this is third point. We need to know the history, the background, to know why we got here, why we're in this material world, that we're actually spiritual beings, we're spirit souls, part and parcel of Krishna, that we came into this material world because of a desire to try to enjoy things that actually can't satisfy us, and that the desires that we have in this life is actually what causes us to suffer. It's a beautiful verse. I was thinking, get ready. These are like some of the verses I learned as a brahmachari years ago. But 522 of the Gita, Krishna says, Yehi samsparshaja boga dukkhyoneva evate adyantakav ankunteya nate shunamate buddha. An intelligent person does not take part in the source of misery, which are due to contact with the material senses. O son of Kunti, such pleasures, there it is, such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and so the wise man does not delight in them. So Krishna's again, given this point, we need to really, really see things in perspective. When we don't see things in perspective, like the child gets so upset because they don't say, hey, it's 30 minutes. I think Prabhupada sometimes we give this example, like if you're on again, how many of you been to India, but part of the experience here is, if you get on a bus, sometimes you don't know if you're ever going to get off again. It's so crowded. I can remember one time years ago with some devotee friends, I think we were in Delhi, and got on a bus to go someplace. And I can remember like being in the back and literally like, my face is packed, up against the window. And it's like, when do we get out of here? And, it was, and luckily, obviously, get off the bus because here I am a few years later. But the perspective, probably gives example, when you get on a train, you get on a bus, it may be uncomfortable, but you keep in mind, hey, it's only a short trip. It's not a big deal. Um, but sometimes people like they get in fist fights about, I wanted that seat and how come you got the better seat? Or, you get in an airplane, sometimes the people like hustling and bumping into each other. And it's like, because they want to get there first. It's like, come on, none of us are going to take off until we all sit down and put our luggage away, right? So like, there's no point in pushing me, sir, or madam. You're not going to get anywhere quicker because we're all in this together. So having that kind of perspective just really helps us. So this is what Brahma is saying with the demigods, the third point. Um, Keep things in perspective. Hey, there's a whole story behind this, my dear demigods. Goes back to my four sons, the four Kumars. They went to Vaikuntha. Of course, he talks about what a wonderful place it is and talks about what it's like to see Lord Narayan. He kind of injects that beautiful spiritual vision as he's telling this story. But he's explaining to them, we have to see things in perspective. And so he's giving him that perspective to calm him down. And then the fourth point, then we'll just open up for some questions. The fourth point is kind of following the same line of thinking. We got to be patient. That's the lesson that comes here. Because when Brahma spoke to the demigods, and they came and said, hey, we got a big problem here. We need your help. And you're the Lord of this universe. You are the servant of the topmost servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But you are in charge of everything here. Can you fix this for us, Brahma? We came to you. We got a problem. Take care of it for us. Will you? And he says, well, you got to understand. You see, there was my four sons, and, they cursed the Jai Vijay, and from there, and blah, 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 blah. So Brahma doesn't solve their problem. Very interesting point. He does not solve their problem. As a matter of fact, I didn't look ahead and read the verses, but we know what's going to happen. It's going to get a lot worse. Right now it's dark. Okay, that's nothing compared to what's coming. Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu are about to like ravage the universe. So my dear demigods, keep in perspective, but it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse for a long time. So, what does that mean? That sounds like a little depressing. So, um, so he's putting it in perspective for them and to help them understand that it's not as difficult as it may be, but at the same time, they need this proper perspective to see things in the proper way. Um, we may think that when we become devotees, that everything's going to be taken care of. I'm going to chant Hare Krishna, maybe I'll get initiated, or I've been initiated, I've got a guru, and I'm following sadhana bhakti, and there's not going to be any more problems. But that's not what it means. When they went to Brahma, Brahma didn't say, okay, I'm going to like wave my magic wand or, use my four heads and figure it out. Brahma said, I'm going to help you understand why this problem exists. I'm going to give you a perspective so you'll understand that it's not, going to be the end of the world, but you do need to understand that this problem is going to be there for a while. And keeping that perspective, you'll be able to push through it. And there's so many parallels there in the Shastra. Like we think about the Pandavas, who are the cousins of Krishna. Arjuna is the best friend of Krishna. Kunti Devi is the aunt of Krishna. And they went through so many problems that even Bhishma, Dave, he said, and when he was lying on the bed of arrows just before he left this world, and Yudhishthira came to see him, he said, I can't understand. Bhishma Dev said, I can't understand why you've gone through so much suffering. It doesn't make sense to me. Even he said like that. Um, he said, ultimately, he said, it must be the plan. It's the plan of the Lord. It must be some plan of the Lord. But I can't understand the details of that. So seeing things properly and with patience, it gives us the ability to tolerate a lot, just like the Pandavas tolerated so much. And ultimately, it's described in the Shastra and through all our charts that we experience a different type of happiness. It's not dependent on how things go outside. Because winter and summer seasons, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, those things are going to come and go, Krishna says. But that actually our happiness comes from within. From within, meaning that we gradually awakening and developing our relationship with Krishna. And that, of course, that's Krishna's final message in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Arjuna, fight for me. He says to all of us, whatever we do, do for him, do for him. And if we do like that, he says, and gradually we'll develop pure love for him. And that we'll actually be happy in this world. And at the end of this lifetime, we'll go back to him. So these are four thoughts, just to kind of summarize again. One, that even the demigod situation is shaky. Don't think when you're driving down the street and you're thinking that there's like a big house or big mansion on the corner. Everything's like we say. I grew up in Michigan, hunky dory. Everything's hunky dory. Everything's fine for those people. It's not. It's not. Birth, death, old age, and disease are there for everybody. So one, that even the demigod's position is a shaky one. Doesn't matter what our status is here. Two, understanding that we have some problems, we should seek higher knowledge, higher understanding of where's this problem coming from, what's the solution to it. Ultimately, that means that we should learn from the representatives of God, of Lord Krishna, directly hear from Krishna directly himself as he speaks in the Bhagavad Gita. Why are there these problems? Is there any solution to these problems? I'm certainly experiencing the solution is not materially speaking. So to seek higher knowledge like that. And then the third principle, to keep everything in perspective. When we get this spiritual perspective, it really makes a big difference on the challenges we face in life. The happiness we know is not going to last. The distress is not going to last. The fame is not going to last. Being the infamy is not going to, it's all temporary. We keep it all in perspective, like again, that example riding on a bus. It's a crowded bus. Okay, don't get upset. You're going to get off soon. It's only a few minutes or an hour or two. It's not anything to be disturbed by. And then the fourth principle, really the need that we be patient and that we understand that um, whatever obstacles or challenges I face. It's not that I become a devotee. I pray, dear Lord Krishna, please take away these problems. I mean, Kunti said, let the problems come again and again and again. Not that we're that exalted of devotees, but that was her meditation, because these problems help us to take shelter of you. So that we should be a little bit patient, understand that becoming a devotee doesn't mean I'm going to have all my problems go away, but that through the process of devotional service, I'll be able to put things in perspective. I will actually experience a type of pleasure from my relationship with Krishna and my spiritual master, predecessor, acharyas, all the Vaishnavas. I'll experience happiness from within. And in this way, that will gradually awaken more and more and more. And then when it's all over, here I get to go back to Krishna. It's like a win-win scenario. So I'll stop there. But I guess I don't know if you quit right in the hour or half hour here in India or what. But Sahadev, I'll turn it back to you if there's any questions or comments anybody'd like to make.
Well, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful Shri Krishna Katha. It's very interesting the way you delivered the messages, texts 9 through 12. One thing I've observed with Sri Prabhupada's writings is that he usually concludes whatever he says from his introduction or the summary of the entire body of the lecture. And that is exactly how I found your delivery today. Because whatever you started with, that is what you also concluded on, just to create more affirmation. We would like to seek the blessings of His Holiness Kavichandra Swami Maharaj. If he has something to say, Maharaj, please you may unmute. Hare Krishna.
No, I would like to hear questions from the devotees.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Maybe I can say something.
Hare Krishna. Mother Gail, please you may unmute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, well, my first question is, that person with the 5 daughters and the $10 billion company. Did you say that person was I don't know, the founder, CEO of Hewlett Packard?
HP.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
he sold his company to Hewlett Packard.
Oh, and then Hewlett Packard gave him the $10 billion worth?
Yeah. He sold his company to them.
Oh, well, the reason why it was of interest of me is because I've used several Hewlett Packard, machines over the years. And one of them, to this day, I still use it. Even today, I use it. And it's like about 40 years old and it still goes strong. But anyway, that's the commercial for them. But the philosophical question I have is, we all know that that money does not buy happiness, right? I mean, we see the celebrities' lives are like totally tragic, you know? We see that the rich and famous, their lives are totally tragic, even though they're so endowed materially. Yet, we find that we're still kind of enamored with it, Our eyebrows go up when we hear about somebody being worth $10 billion still, So, how to have what we know in our intellect come into our heart so that our eyebrows stop raising every time we hear about them or every time we see how glamorous some celebrity is, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, it's described the power of hearing really kind of works both ways because in the Isha Upanishad describes that we should simultaneously cultivate knowledge of transcendence and of nescience at the same time. So, the same way we go on hearing about Krishna, his beautiful pastimes, his beautiful features, his loving relationships with the devotees, the more and more we hear about that, gradually we become convinced, and of course, as we get purified, we gradually start to really experience it. But at least just on the platform of intellectual conviction, the more and more we hear, the more and more convinced we become. So in the same way, with the material experiences, the more and more we hear, the more and more we see it, the more and more that conviction sinks in. As I'm sure you've experienced also, Gail, sometimes like you feel I always think it's kind of like a roller coaster. You feel really, really convinced one day, one week, one month, and then you go through periods of like, why is my mind so much giving me trouble thinking about things that I've thought about for years? Where's that coming from? Well, that's all, it's our past karma. It's all kind of stocked up in our consciousness. But as explained that if we probably gives the example like, you pull out the plug on a fan, it's going to keep running for some time. But if you keep putting it in again, it's going to get more power, and then you got to pull it out and let it run. So it takes some time, um, but it's a process. It's a process of cleansing our heart and gradually filling our heart with more and more conviction about Krishna, and then cleansing our heart from these misconceptions to think that actually there's something that this material world can offer us. And we've been here a long time, and we've got a lot of deep-seated habits, and it takes some time to get rid of those. And as I mentioned, that's one of the things where we have to practice patience. It's described one of the 6 qualities required for pure devotional service is patience. Enthusiasm, confidence that we're going to attain the success, and patience. And I mean, I've been a devotee for 50 years, and I mean, I've got a long ways to go yet. And some of the committees I work with, like Kavi Chandra Maharaj, when we have to deal with some of the problems with devotees who've been practicing for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. And sometimes, material desires come up again. But also I take hope that I've been around long enough to see somebody go away and you're like, oh my gosh, how could they leave? I mean, they were my superior. They gave such nice classes or led nice kirtans. What chance do I have if they get pulled away? But we see over time, a lot of those people that get pulled, they get pulled away. It's like they're on the cycle. They get pulled away. And then 5 years, 10 years, 15 years later, they come back again. Hey, can I wash a few pots and do some devotional service? So that also gives us faith that we can see that this process, even if sometimes we may get swept away, it is a gradual process of awakening that we just be patient and continue acting on the instructions of Prabhupada and our acharyas, and success is described. It's guaranteed. The 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says it's guaranteed for the rigid practitioner, which means just don't give up. Just keep going on. Is that okay, Gail? Is that
Well, it's kind of
Shed some light?
bittersweet. It's kind of bittersweet because wait. Yeah, it's kind of bittersweet because, on the one hand, yeah, you see people come back, but it's kind of discouraging to see that a person could have been plugging away for like decades and still get derailed. That's like so scary, you know?
It's
It's like,
scary.
it just kind of throws a little doubt about how really well this process works, that a person could have been so, sincere, so diligent, and still this roller coaster is
Well, one
there.
thing to keep in mind, Prabhupada one time said, my disciples are very nice. They only have one problem. They're not afraid enough of Maya.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
you just mentioned that, that it's fear. There's some fear there, but we should be afraid. Oops, somebody needs to be muted. We should be afraid. And but also it shows us, as it described, material energy is so powerful. I mean, we're the tiny, tiny, tiny jiva, right? It's also described, right? We're like brilliant like the sun ourselves, but material energy is so powerful. It can cover us over. So we just have to pray to Krishna, please, Lord, please help us, please save us. He's our shelter.
Well, thank you, Prabhu. I don't know if there's space for another question. Sahadev, do you want to go to somebody else? Because I have one more.
Yeah, let me ask my question and then you may come back
Okay.
if that is okay.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, thank you so much. I've been wondering about this situation, and it's very much highlighted in today's discussion also. Now, Srila Prabhupada oftentimes quoted Chanakya Pandit, and one of his wonderful sayings is that when one goes to the forest, you only see two types of trees. A tree that is standing straight and a tree that is crooked. And out of the two, oftentimes is the tree that stands straight that gets cut down, not the crooked one. So in this material world, we see how oftentimes negativity triumphs over positivity, at least for the time being. Now we have these two demons, Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, as embryos. And just by their conception, the whole universe is put into darkness. Now, the question I have is, how does the universal administrators allow negativity to overshadow positivity? And even in the material world also, we see that those who live pious lives, they suffer the most. Those who go on doing all sorts of treacherous activities, they enjoy. Why that is the case, and what can we learn from that, and do not get ourselves into becoming negativities ourselves because we do not want to go through what those who live pious lives go through. Hare Krishna.
That's about 5 questions rolled into one. I mean, a couple of thoughts. One is that we know in this world there's 3 modes of material nature, and it's described they're always in competition with one another. Sometimes one wins and the other one wins like that. We also know that things in the mode of passion, they're like nectar, or they look like they win in the beginning, but in the long run, they don't. So again, we have to see things from the proper perspective, right? Just like we also know another factor, it's Kali Yuga. We're not living in such a yuga. This is Kali Yuga. So you've got all these different forces of passion and ignorance that are so powerful now. It's an age when those things win. I mean, you thinking when there was the fight between the demigods and Bali Maharaj, I think it was, and um, who told them? I think Brahma or somebody, their guru. Somebody told them, "Don't fight now. This is not your time. This is the time of the bad guys." So, we see that sometimes, like, political situations. Sometimes you wonder, how is it possible that, these people seem to be thriving, who are, not good people oftentimes, but they tend to be thriving, and I think this is a, a, a challenge for us. And again, he asked a lot of questions, and there's a lot of different answers. I think part of it is keeping the perspective that we don't believe that getting Krishna's mercy means he's going to give me a bunch of material opulences. Our theory is, our philosophy is not a theology of what do they call it, prosperity theology. It's not like, okay, you go to church, you go to the Hare Krishna temple, and you're going to walk out of there with like a lot of material stuff, like, dear God, gimme, gimme, gimme. And you hear about, some people go to church or temple or mosque, and that's why they go. They want some kind of benediction. Well, that's not what Krishna promises. What he tells us is that you're not of this material world, you're a spiritual being. We're trying to enjoy in a place that, like mixing oil and water, it doesn't work. And when we realize it doesn't work, then it's going to take us some time to become more purified. But Krishna's going to help us to get out of here. In the meantime, it's not going to be like there was a country song, right? I beg your pardon, I never promised you a rose garden, right? So Prabhupada says, chant, dance, and be happy. But again, as I mentioned before, the happiness is different kind. It comes from within. And I think we have to be careful we don't think perhaps like it's too broad of a term like a materialistic religion. It's just that he's gonna fix everything here and now. This is not the place for here and now. Oh, that was the other thing I want to say. This is the place for those folks that don't want to be nice guys to come, right? Somebody may say, like, you find yourself in your prison house and you think about, like, why is there so many criminals in here? Well, sorry. Or you go to a hospital. Why is there so many sick people here? Well, sorry. Or you go to an insane asylum. Why is there so many crazy people here? Well, get out of there. What are you doing there? If you realize it's such a bad place, well, then get out, right? So I think that's a really important part of the lesson. We have to see things from that perspective. So anyway, those are a few thoughts. Maybe we'll take two more questions, and it's getting kind of late Sunday.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. The hospital and the jail answers my
Yeah,
question so beautifully. Thank you so much.
yeah. In,
Uh,
in, in the middle in the middle of Kali Yuga, right? It's like,
yes,
you
yes,
know.
yes. Madhupan Leela, please give me unmute. So good to have you here, Madhupan. Hare Krishna. Is it
Hare
possible?
Krishna, Prabhu.
Okay, good, good. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the class, Anutama Prabhu. It's very nice to hear from you again. I feel like I have a very similar question, but I'm just
Where are
phrasing it in
you
a
from?
different
You look
way.
familiar to me, but I don't remember where I know you from.
I've met you at Gitanagari. I used to live
Gitanagari.
there, yes,
Okay,
for the
okay. Where are you living
retreats.
now?
I just moved off the farm, so I just live like 5 minutes down the street with a
Oh, okay.
devotee.
Well, for me, that's still Gita Nagari.
That's
Okay,
the
you're
Gitanagari.
Yes,
you're
I'm
you're in
still
the
in the
greater
Gitanagari
you're in the
community.
greater Gita Nagari area. Okay, great.
Yes. So after listening to your answers, I'm hearing that I think I have the same question, but I'm just phrasing it in a different way. So hopefully it's not too much repetitive for you.
Yeah, I might give you the same answer in a different way, but go ahead.
That's okay. Maybe I'll take it in a different way. Um, so I'm wondering, you were speaking on like the last bit of your class and also in these different questions about like kind of this like having problems that keep you stuck in different places and in the material world. Maybe I just heard a little, I only heard like half of everything you were saying. But so I was wondering if we have these sort of things like, for example, for myself, I had this fallout relationship with some devotees, and I'm trying to like get over it so that I can keep doing my services. But there's like so much tension within the heart, like, oh, they said these things, they did these things, and it's hard for me to like sort of just cross that bridge, like, oh, water underneath the bridge, it's fine. And then I've noticed that if I keep having these sort of like interactions with people or situations happen where you kind of like hold on to things and can't just like see it from a different perspective, like, oh, I took birth in the material world, so this is my fault, then it keeps us like stuck. And then I feel like it would be harder to, like, at the end of our life, we're holding on to all these little tiny things that happened, even though they're actually so small in like the span of life. So I'm just wondering how to like move on past those things so that we can kind of not have them like those hard knots in the heart, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really deep question. Um, I think that, of course, and I don't know the details, so it's I kind of answer it in a generality. But I think that there's some things that we have to try to get beyond that aren't such big challenges that we just have to work on it and think about it philosophically and all those kind of things you talked about. That are they're kind of easy to get. There's other things that they're more serious in terms of interpersonal relationships. And hold on just one second. Okay, sorry. No technical problems. Yeah, it's such a deep question. So there's some things that we can get over fairly easy. There's some things, I mean, I'm thinking like in terms you started out by saying interpersonal relationships. I know I can speak from my own experience and watching others. It's not that every single devotee in our lives we're going to get along with well, or it's not that every single problem that comes up is going to go away. I mean, sometimes I've had experiences, people come up to me and they'll say, yeah, you said this or that, 10, 15 years ago, and I've been upset ever since. And I'm kind of like, what? I sometimes I don't even remember. And it may be because I was not very sensitive about it, or apparently just that's the main thing. I just wasn't very sensitive, didn't realize like how much of a difficulty it was for them. But I think that at other times, I think that other times we just have to kind of realize that we're not gonna resolve all of these. We should try, but it shouldn't be a barrier in our ultimate relationship with Krishna, because it's just the nature of this material world. Krishna describes there's friends and there's enemies, and ultimately that's just also another illusory perception, because everybody is part and parcel of Krishna. Everybody's ultimately our friend. But according to our disposition, according to our karma, according to the culture we have and this and that, we're going to be thrown in a different kind of situation where some people there will be friction. And we should try to work through as much of it as we possibly can. We should always try to like take a humble position and try to beg forgiveness for whatever we may have done wrong from our side. And at the same time, understand that sometimes it may just be that those things don't get resolved in this lifetime. And that's not a reason for us to that we can't become Krishna conscious. Um, it's just the reality of the world. Maybe you can put her back on again, because I can't see where she went to see how she's responding to this. I have no. There you are. Okay, I can see you again. Um, yeah, I mean those are just some thoughts without having a lot of time to think about your in-depth question. But I think some of them we can resolve. Again, summarize like Sahadev, like the summary. Some are small, relatively small, we can resolve. I mean, they may be pretty big, but relatively small. We realize, hey, I made a mistake. I should acknowledge my mistake. I should ask forgiveness. I should rectify whatever. Like I borrow your motorcycle and I smash it, okay? I should apologize. I should acknowledge that I made a big mistake by, slipping and sliding on the mud of the Gitanagari Road, and I shouldn't have done that. I get your bike fixed, and I promise I'm going to take a motorcycle driving training so I never do it again. There's steps I can take to try to rectify it as best possible. Other things, other relationships may take more time. It takes time to work those things out. I shouldn't expect they're going to be fixed overnight. And there will definitely be some people, some individuals in this lifetime that it's just, there's not going to be, even devotees, there's not going to be a perfect relationship. We still should respect them. We still should try to not do anything that harms anybody else, especially devotees, intentionally. And at the same time, recognize that not every situation in this life is going to work itself out. I mean, I can say I'm 71 years old. Maybe I'll change. If I live another 20 years, maybe I'll come back. You can ask me this question in 19 and a half years. Maybe I'll have different insights on that. But that's my practical observation from being 71 and being a devotee for 50 years and seeing devotees in different parts of the world. And it's just the fact that sometimes there are going to be relationships that just we respect, but we can't necessarily manifest in this time deep appreciation and affection for each other, but we can still respect each other from a little bit of a distance. So I guess I'm saying, like, don't take on too much of a burden to think that you will automatically, not automatically, you will be able to work out all these relationships. I'm sorry to share the bad news, but it's not like every one of them will work out. We should try to work out as many as we can, but some will not right away. They may take a long, long, long time, and maybe not in this lifetime. And don't let it be an impediment in your Krishna consciousness. That's the main thing. Try to work on the ones you can. try to work on all of them. But if things aren't working out, don't think this is an impediment. I can't become Christian conscious because I still don't like her, or she still doesn't like me, or he still criticizes me, or he still has a different opinion, or he hasn't forgiven me for something that happened 10, 15 years ago. Okay, I do my best, and that's not a reason I can't become Christian conscious. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. That was very, very nice. I really appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't as concise as I would like to be, but there was a few things to share there.
No,
Yeah.
there was lots of nectar in between. Thank you.
Okay. So
Hare
Hansa
Krishna.
do that question. Sade, we do one more?
Yes, Hamsadrita, and then yes, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hamsadrita, you may unmute, and if possible, you may turn on your video,
Yes. Okay.
if possible. If not, okay.
Possible. Sometimes with the video, I become a little bit nervous to ask the question, but I will try.
All right.
Your great spirit can you accept my aspect of the senses? All gratitude, all grace to Prabhupada, and all grace to one.
Always, Papa.
Please, I have two questions, and it's about karma. We devotees, we believe in karma and reincarnation. My question is that, for example, if let's say somebody attack a devotee or insult a devotee, and the person is going and he was hit by a car and he died and he left his body, can we say that it's because of he attacked a devotee, that's the reason why he was hit by the car, or is this something that has to happen to him, and what he did, the devotee was waiting for him to pay in his next life? That's for example, if does this have to happen the same way? What the things you do, that this has to, you have to pay in the karma the same way, exactly the same way, or you can pay it in different ways? And the
Yeah, well,
second,
karma, I mean, we understand Prabhupada talked about the law of karma is a very complicated one. So sometimes we may get things back directly. You know, I do something, I get so angry at somebody and I say things that are very painful. And then to help me understand that I get the karma back, somebody else is very angry and they are say very painful things to me. It roughly corresponds, and that teaches me. Sometimes it happens like that. I would just say that we have to be very careful to not presume that we can understand the complexities of this world. You know, like if I say, well, Hansadud Prabhu, you stole my gulab yesterday, and that's why your house was broken into last night. You know, I mean, I pray that never happens, but just as an example, that would be very presumptuous of me. That would be very arrogant to me to think that I can understand. Now, as an individual, you know, if I stole your gulab, okay, and the next day my house was broken into, I may individually think in my humility, Krishna, wow, look at the karma that I got. I offended a devotee, and immediately this reaction came. I may feel that way, that's between me and Krishna, but we have to be very, very careful that I don't extrapolate and blame you for things, you meaning, someone else, thinking that I understand the laws of karma so well that I know why something happened to you. That's, we're not God. We shouldn't play God. We should be humble. And Prabhupada describes it, the way a devotee should think is that whatever happiness comes is by Krishna's grace. I didn't deserve it. It's much better than I deserved. And whatever distress comes, we should think actually Krishna's lessened this. He's made it smaller for me. And I deserve much more trouble than I got. So that's, the way we look at it is very important. And we, Krishna says in the Gita, says the intricacies of action and inaction and reaction, very difficult to understand. So, we should be careful to not think we got it all figured out. It's too complicated.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, we are having some conversations last week with some group, and they asked me about this question, and I was having it very, very difficult to answer that. So I said I'll, if I get opportunity to have somebody who's more advanced than me, then I'll ask this question. So the second question is that uh, is karma is something which is always we can say is something spiritual or is physical or subtle. How can you explain to somebody who don't believe in spirituality something about karma if it's something
Uh,
spiritual
uh.
or something
Yeah, well, that's actually not so hard because in science, if somebody is not spiritual, generally they have some faith in like science or materialistic processes or something like that. So there's a law, I think it was one of Newton's laws about every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So even in science, they have this understanding of karma, you know. And if somebody's not a Vaishnava, but they believe like in the Bible says, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. If you plant corn, you're going to get corn. You plant peas, you're going to get peas. You don't get tomatoes out of a zucchini plant, like you get according to what you do. So, in a similar way, I think people that are not spiritually inclined, they do have some sense that there's a reaction. And I can remember before it was devotees, somebody just explained to me, they said, well, you've heard of the laws of action and reaction. I said, yeah, of course. So, well, if that affects huge things like planets, who am I to think it doesn't affect me, right? I'm so small. Shouldn't that affect me in some way? So that just makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think as far as materialistic people, sometimes it's easier for them to understand why we would accept karma on basis of some scientific principle. But I'll just mention one other thing, which I think sometimes devotees forget, or people that are from Hindu traditions sometimes maybe get hung up on. It's like, okay, or critics will say, okay, you say everything is everybody's karma. So there's some poor child in the street. Well, that's their karma. What can be done about it? There's a war. Okay, that's their karma. What can be done about it? Somebody's sick. Well, that's their karma. Don't be upset. But Vaishnavas, I've heard it explained, it's not, we're not so concerned about karma. I may not be understand karma. What's more important for us is dharma, religious principle, and ultimately, kindness, compassion. So that it may be somebody's karma that they've got physical ailments from their birth, or they've got problems in their family, or economic problems, or different ways that, legal problems described in Nectar Devotion, different ways karma can cause us to suffer. But whatever their karma may be, I don't really know what that is, but I know that my dharma is to try to help, and my duty given to me by Prabhupada and Krishna and my Guru Maharaj, my dharma is to try to help alleviate that suffering. So I may not know why they're suffering. I do ultimately, because they came in the material world. They're spiritual beings. They forgot their relationship with Krishna. That's why they're suffering. And it's my responsibility as a Vaishnava to try to help them alleviate that situation, which of course, begins with just ordinary kindness to people. It's not, sometimes we think that you can be mean to somebody, but you give them a book and then that rectifies it. Well, no, why do they go against each other? You should be kind to them and give them a book. You should be generous to them and give them a book. You should be full of smiles and let them hear the kirtan. Not that you chant to people on the street and then you growl at them when they walk by. What's that all about? We should we should be ordinarily kind, and we should be transcendently extraordinarily kind. Both should be there. So if you get that, you may get that sometimes. People say, "Well, you people believe in karma. You have no compassion. You just want to blame it all on karma." No, no, no. Because we understand karma causes people to suffer in this world, but our dharma is we want to try to alleviate that suffering as much as possible and try to go to the root cause.
Yes, thank you so much. So grateful. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for this wonderful Krishna Katha. Of course, we've come to the end of the Katha today. Prabhuji, it's quite late your time, and we're very grateful. But before we bring this to a final close, we would like to invite His Holiness Kavichandra Swami Maharaj to share some words of wisdom or whatever it is with us. Maharaj, please, if you may unmute.
I came to just listen, but I like that we're more concerned with dharma. Devotees ask so often, is that karma? We can't say for sure, it's mixed with when we become devotees, Krishna takes control to some extent, depending on how much we're surrendered. So anyway, thank you for the class, and everybody who attends these classes. You're very fortunate that we get so many different speakers. And of course, we're inviting everybody to visit Africa, especially West Africa. Devotees often visit South Africa and East Africa, but not very many visit West Africa. There's a lot of devotees, a lot of temples, and they're very happy to have guests. So thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Of course, to those who might not know, His Holiness is the GBC for West Africa, and he's been there for so many years. So almost all of us are his mentors or disciples, and it's an honor to have his association today. And Prabhuji, I would like to say this briefly. Personally, and I believe on behalf of Hare Krishna Africa, we want to express our deepest appreciation and gratitude to you for accepting this service to be with us today and sharing this depth of wisdom and practical application to devotional service with us all today. And because most of us, if not all of us, are quite sinful, even though we wish to bless you, we are unable to bless you other than to say and express that may your half a century devotional service to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada be thy reward, because there is nothing else we can reward you with better than your service to Srila Prabhupada. And we're very much honored and very much grateful that you could be here with us. And we hope to have your divine association more and more in the very near future. Prabhuji is very exemplary because to those of you who might not be aware, Prabhuji is the Minister of Communication of the entire ISKCON world. And being a Minister of Communication, as you might imagine, you're going to hurt lots of people because you're trying to address issues. And if issues being addressed do not go a particular way, a particular person is looking, then you're labeled partial or insensitive. But Prabhuji still does what he does because it's service to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhuji, we're very grateful for all your service. And if you may have a concluding remark, you may do that, and then we'll bring this to a final close. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Well, just in conclusion, as I mentioned these verses, it's interesting because they're, in one sense, they're not particularly important verses. I mean, there's nothing really happening there. It's a premise, it's a preamble for what's happening. But in each of those verses, there's so much information can be brought out, just like we said, even the demigods have a tough time. Don't be distracted by it. Don't be disturbed by it. Seek higher knowledge, be patient. So we should all try to take advantage of that and remember, kind of like going back to Gail's question and some of the other questions, that it really is because of devotee association and we have hope in this world. Because devotees, they give us strength. Because by ourselves, it's just me and my mind. My mind is too tough on me. There's too much ignorance. Speaking on in terms of my life. There's a lot of ignorance up here. There's a lot of negativity comes up here. But when associated with devotees, it really gives us hope. It helps us know we're not the only ones that are struggling in this world. Helps us know that other people also, they're gradually building their own faith in Krishna, and they're having their ups and their own downs, but they continue on. And Krishna's helping them in various ways and gives us the conviction to go on. So thank you for your wonderful association, giving the opportunity. And I will just reflect what Kavi Chandramar said. I did have a chance to go to West Africa once. I enjoyed it very, very much. Was able to spend 4 or 5 days there, and would also similarly echo his mood that more and more devotees from other parts of the world should try to go there. It's a wonderful opportunity to have association with devotees in that part of the world. So, in my part of the world, it's 10 o'clock, so I'll sign off. Sahade
Yes.
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We may want to ask you to wait for just 30 seconds
Okay.
so that we finish our rituals. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, we've asked you all to kindly unmute yourselves, and we all chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra to express our deepest appreciation to our revered speaker, His Grace, Sri ANUTTAMA Prabhu, for sharing his love and wisdom with us all. Please, you may all unmute Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Hare Rama,
Rama Rama,
Hare Rama, Hare
Kalpatarubhyascha kripa
Tamam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Glorious His Grace, Anuttama Prabhu ki jai. All Jagat Guru Prabhupada ki jai. All Vaishnava Vaishnavi devotees ki jai.